we continue our journey of intellectual development with well-known Islamic spiritual scholar Maulana Waiduddin Khan. Maulana Waiduddin Khan is the president of Islamic Center New Delhi and also the founder of Center for Peace and Spirituality. Welcome Maulana Waiduddin Khan sir. Maulana, when we talk about the freedom which a man enjoys, it has often come under debate, more often for wrong reasons. In fact, the well-noted French political reformer Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in his book Social Contract, wrote that man was born free, but I see him in chains. Why do you think God has given man the freedom?
I think that Rousseau was a political thinker, so he cannot understand the relevance of freedom in human life. His thinking was political thinking. According to my experience and my study, I can say that freedom is a blessing. Freedom is a blessing because it is freedom that gives us a ticket to paradise, provided we use freedom in a restricted manner. You know, God created paradise, an eternal world, beautiful world, ideal world, perfect world. All kind of beauties are in paradise. Now God Almighty wants to select people, to select those people who are a deserving candidate for this paradise. So the only basic criterion is that those who use their freedom in a controlled manner. Now you know God has given total freedom. We enjoy total freedom. But we are not owner of the paradise. We have to prove ourselves able. So what is the ability? Ability is that you are a controlled person. You are the capacity to control yourself. Self-controlled person. And if you have this quality of self-control, then you can use freedom in a proper way. You can save yourself from misusing the freedom. So one who misuses his freedom, he will go to hell. And one who uses freedom in a proper way, he will go to paradise. So freedom is very important. Freedom is a blessing because this is the only test paper by which we can prove our ability to be selected for paradise. So one who misuses freedom will go to paradise, and one who uses his freedom in a proper way, he will go to paradise.
So, is this paradise real or symbolic?
Paradise is a real world, not symbolic world. Just like our present world. Our present world is a real world. I mean this planet Earth. So, this planet Earth is a real world. So is the paradise. The only difference is that present world is a imperfect world, but paradise is a perfect world. So this is the only difference. Otherwise, all those items which we find in this world also we will be given in paradise. So there is no difference except that paradise is an eternal world and perfect world, and present world is a imperfect world. This is the only difference.
Maulana, this paradise which you just talked about pertains to the unseen world. We have not seen paradise. Can a man experience paradise in this world?
Yes. Present world is an experience, like an experience. We every day experience that there is a world, there is planet Earth. You know, in the planet Earth, all those items are present. All kind of comfort, all kind of luxury, all kind of beauty, everything is present in this world, but in a imperfect way. Everything is here, but not in a perfect manner. So the only difference between this world and paradise is that this world is an imperfect paradise, and the paradise is a perfect paradise. So according to the science, according to the scientific law, if a thing is, if it is proved that an imperfect world exists, we are living in this world, so it is quite certain that there is a world which we call Earth. So it is a scientific formula that if a world is proved, then it is also proved that other world exists. So it is our experience that an imperfect, it is our common experience that an imperfect world exists, and we are living in this world. So the existence of imperfect world itself is a proof that a perfect world also exists. So it is quite scientific belief or scientific formula. So I don't have any doubt that paradise exists, just like I have no doubt that present Earth exists. If present planet Earth exists, so I can say that paradise also exists, because the existence of planet Earth it itself is a proof that planet paradise is also exists.
Taking that further, Maulana, can spirituality be scientifically explained?
Spirituality.
Yes.
As those people who believe in heart-based spirituality, I think they cannot prove it. It is completely a feeling. But I believe in mind-based spirituality, and I think that it is provable, because all the activities of mind are well known. We can prove that there is a mind. We can prove that there is mind have a thinking capacity. So those who believe in heart-based spirituality, they cannot prove it. But I believe in mind-based spirituality, and that is completely provable. Because when mind is provable, then mind-based spirituality is also provable.
What is this difference between mind-based spirituality and heart-based spirituality? Can you please elaborate on that?
Yes. Those who believe in heart-based spirituality, they believe in ecstasy. Ecstasy. And they say that when you are engaged in heart-based spirituality, we receive ecstasy. There is Vajd. Vajd is not a thinking state. Vajd is simply a feeling without thinking. Vajd or ecstasy is thinking without. Vajd or ecstasy is a feeling without thinking. But the other kind of spirituality that is based on mind is completely based on thinking. All those the result of spiritual exercise is completely completely can be it can be defined in intellectual term. For example, if I am in sorrow, if I am sad, so I can analyze it. I can give an intellectual answer. For example, I can say that sorrow is a part of life. Sorrow is not an evil. We are living in a world where there are competition, there are challenge. So it is but natural that there is sorrow, there are grievances. So it is part of life. So everything that is part of life, you have to tolerate it because you cannot remove it. Just like a rose plant. You know, at every branch of rose plant there are flower and thorn both. So you have to accept the both. When you cannot remove the thorn, you have to accept it. So when you cannot remove sorrow from life, grievances from life, so you have to accept it. And when you accept, then you can remove the tension. Tension is a result of non-acceptance. When you are not ready to accept, when you are not ready to accept the thorn, then it will create tension. But when you accept the thorn, then there is no tension. It is a simple formula. So, in mind-based spirituality is a thinking exercise. Everything is known here. But heart-based spirituality is nothing but ecstasy that cannot be explained in term of intellect.
Maulana, everything that a man does, the most important thing that he uses is his mind. What do you think is the importance of this mind?
Mind is the most important part of our being. We have a dual personality, body and mind. Body is nothing but a vehicle. The real personality is mind. We are man because we have mind. Without mind there is no man. So body is simply a vehicle of mind. The real personality is your mind. You know, it is mind that makes you man. Animals have no such mind, and stars and planets have no mind. So, the mind we have is very unique in the world, in the universe. No planet, no stars, no trees, no animal has such mind. No animal have such minds. So it is our distinction. So most valuable part of our life is mind. And body is simply a vehicle. Just all.
Mulana, we often hear this statement that truth is religion and religion is truth. Do you think that this statement is correct?
It is simply a confusion. It has no meaning. It has no meaning. I have heard such phrases, but it has no meaning. No one can explain it in logical terms. If you ask those people what you mean by this phrase, they cannot explain it in logical term or in rational term. I have asked those people to give me explanation of this phrase, but they fail. So it is simply a confusion, and it is not a logical formula or rational formula. A beautiful phrase. That's all.
Mulana, when we talk about this religion, we also when we talk about religion, Mulana, the person who comes into the mind is that who gave this. One second. Two prophets. When we talk about religion, the next question that comes to mind is who gave us this religion, or who communicated the word of God. And we talk about prophets. Why do you think that the prophets were sent from time to time?
To provide guidance. God Almighty created man and settled him on this earth. But with man there was no guidebook, no guidance. So God provided guidance through prophet. In every age and in every period of time, God select someone and reveal his truth to this person. That is prophet. So prophet is a revealed person. Prophet is just like ours. Prophet is a man. Prophet is a bashar. He is not a superman. The only difference is that he is a revealed person. So as there was no other source to know what is the meaning of life, everyone faces some questions. Everyone. Who am I? What is the purpose of life? What is death? What is after death? So all these questions are unanswered. No philosophy can provide you answer to these questions. So God sent prophets to provide answers to these questions. So every prophet was a blessing for. Every prophet was a blessing. So God sent prophets in every time, and Prophet Muhammad was the final prophet, because the revelation he received from God is now preserved completely. So when the revelations are preserved, then there is no need of prophet. In ancient days, what happened in ancient days, that Prophet's revelation was lost after the death of the Prophet. So their revelation was not preserved. But Prophet Muhammad, but the revelation received by Prophet Muhammad is preserved completely in its original language. So now we need no prophet. The book, the revealed book, is enough for us.
Are the sending of prophets time and again a process of reincarnation?
Not at all. Prophethood and reincarnation both are quite different. Prophet means Prophet was a person like ours. He was a bashar. He was a man. The only difference was that he received revelations from God. So according to our belief, Prophet was a man like ours, and he received revelation from God. But reincarnation means God Himself descended. God Himself appeared in a human form. That is quite different. We don't believe in incarnation. We believe in prophethood, but I think that incarnation is not a correct concept. Incarnation is simply a supposition. It is not based on any logic. Prophethood is based on logic, on rational ground. But incarnation is simply a supposition. I don't know any logic behind it.
Maulana, coming on to the Prophet of Islam, Dr. Michael Hart, in his book The 100, placed Prophet Muhammad in the number one position, both in secular sense and in religious sense. Why do you think he did that?
His was only historical criterion. According to historical survey, he found that Prophet of Islam was a supremely successful man. He wanted to list all those persons who were super achievers. So he found that Prophet of Islam was supremely successful person. So he was not a religious person, according to my knowledge. He only wanted to examine some historical persons who were super achievers. So according to his survey, he found that among all super achievers, Prophet Muhammad was number one. So he published his book, The 100. This book is simply a secular survey of history. It is not a religious book.
It is also believed that Prophet Muhammad spread Islam by the use of his sword. Would you agree with this statement?
No. It is wrong, completely wrong. Sword was never used for preaching. It's completely wrong. Here I would like to give you some reference. For example, in India, some people wrongly say that in India, Islam was preached by sword. But Swami Vivekananda, he is a great scholar of India. He has observed in his book letters of Swami Vivekananda. He says that it is nonsense to say that Hindus were converted to Islam by force. Then the other reference is that a Christian scholar, T.W. Arnold, has published a book, The Preaching of Islam. In this book, he gives this. In this book, he has surveyed all the countries, all the history of Islam. So he found that sword was never used for preaching. Sword was used only for defense, political defense. As far as the preaching is concerned, it was completely through peaceful method, peaceful dialogue, peaceful discussion. So it is a rumor without any historical base. I don't know any. Once I faced a person when I happened to meet a person. He was a Hindu scholar. He said that read the book Indian Musliman. In this book, the writer has proved that Islam was preached by sword. So I obtained that book, Indian Musliman, was published in 1930. The writer was a British. So when I started reading this book, I found that there is chapter. The caption of this chapter is peaceful penetration of Islam in India. Peaceful penetration of Islam in India. So I sent a letter to that person that why you say that this book, this author says that Islam was preached by sword. The fact is quite different. The author says that Islam in India penetrated peacefully. So he became speechless. So this is a rumor without any historical evidence.
Maulana, it is also believed that Prophet's Ummah is the best Ummah. Do you agree with this statement?
No, not at all. It is also a rumor. Prophet Ummah is just like other Ummah. The salvation depends on individuals. Group-wise salvation is not in Islam. It is not Islamic concept. Some people believe that salvation is a group-wise salvation. He is wrong. لَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَا فُرَادًا. So according to Islamic belief, salvation is individual based and not group based. So no ummah is superior, no ummah is better than the other ummah. This kind of belief is wrong.
Maulana, dua, which is an important part of Islam, what are the conditions according to you under which God will accept dua of His creation?
There is a verse in the Quran, إِلَيْهِ يَصْعَدُ الْكَلِمُ الطَّيِّبُ وَالْعَمَلُ الصَّالِحُ يَرْفَعُهُ. It means that only good word ascends to God, and good deed elevates it. So it requires good deed if you want to make a dua, you have to boost, you have to back your dua with good deed. If you are making a dua, you have to back your dua with good deed. Otherwise, your dua will not reach to God and it will not be accepted by God.
But Maulana, in Quran it is mentioned that God is closer to you, even closer than your jugular vein. Why do you think then we need to make a dua? Won't God give things on His own?
No, it is wrong. God is very close to us, means that when we try to call, He will listen our call. It doesn't mean that He Himself will accept our dua without making dua. It is wrong to say. So that verse means that God is present everywhere. God is available everywhere. God listens every word of man. So if you want to contact God, you will find that God was very near to you. If you want to call God, you will find that God was listening your words. So this is the meaning of that verse.
Quran also talks about a very unusual verse in chapter 39, verse number 10, that God will give unaccounted reward to those people who will be patient. What does this verse actually mean?
Yes, this is in the Quran. Innama yuwaffas sabirun ajrahum bighair hisab. It means that in this world, you cannot do any good thing except patience, because this world was created as a testing ground. So in this world, everywhere there are competition, there are challenge, there are misuse of freedom. Everywhere there are problems. So you cannot do good deed except you keep patience. Otherwise you will fight. Every time you will fight others. In such a world where every time there are competition, every time there are challenge, every time there are problems, every time there are those people who misuse their freedom, so this situation will create problem for you. So you have no option other than to ignore these people, to be patient. There is no other option. So one who is not ready to keep patience, he cannot do anything, because he will always fight. Every time he will be engaged in fighting. So patience means saving yourself from distraction. Sabr or patience saves you from distraction, from wasting your time, from wasting your money. So sabr is very important. Without sabr or patience, you will waste your time, you will waste your money, because you will fight. So patience or ignorance, patience or avoidance is very important for true believers.
But Maulana, people say that we will be patient provided justice is meted out to us. Don't you think that both go hand in hand? That is, peace with justice is the right option for people to take?
Not at all. Justice is result of your own struggle. Justice is not part of peace. Peace gives you opportunities, and by availing these opportunities, you can get your right or justice. So it is very important to know that justice is not an integral part of peace. Peace gives you opportunities, and through your struggle, through your hard work, you can find justice. So justice is result of your hard work and not result of peace.
Maulana, noted Harvard professor Samuel Huntington talked about the clash of civilization. What is this clash of civilization according to you? Does it really exist?
Not at all. I have read this book. The title itself is wrong. Author says that clash of civilizations, but the book gives the detail of clash of interests. The whole book speaks of clash of interests, and the title has given clash of civilization. So there is no clash of civilizations. It is wrong. Although there are clash of interests, and book gives accounts of those kind of clash. There is clash of interests, but wrongly he gives this title to his book. So the correct title is Clash of Interests rather than Clash of Civilizations.
What is your formula for living peacefully in this multi-religious, multicultural civilization?
My formula is based on the Quranic formula, that is Lakum Deenukum Waliya Deen. For you, your religion; for me, mine. In other words, it means follow one and respect all. This is the only practical formula. Follow one and respect all. No other formula is available. No other formula is feasible. This is the only practical formula. Follow one and respect all.
Maulana, the freedom of man has always come under debate. So much so that many people have often talked about the misuse of freedom, which people Maulana, the freedom which man enjoys has always come under debate. In fact, the noted French political reformer Jean-Jacques Rousseau mentioned in his book Social Contract that man was born free, but I see him in chains. Why do you think God has given freedom to man?
You know,
Maulana, it is said that the most certain thing in a person's life is death. How can a man learn lessons from death? एक सेकेंड. Maulana, it is said that the most certain thing in a man's life is death. How can a man learn lessons from death?
that is a very important question. You know, man is, death is fatal. There is no escape from death. No king, no wealthy people, nothing can save you from death. Everyone dies after 60 years, 70 years, 90 years. So it is very important. Now, this is the greatest lesson. death gives you greatest lesson. What is that lesson? You see, if a tree dies or if an animal dies, that is quite different. When a tree dies, it dies completely. When an animal dies, it dies completely. After death, there is nothing. But when a man dies, his death is not complete death. You know, it is what I am saying, it is a scientific concept that death, when one dies, he dies only in terms of body. As far as his mind is concerned, mind is beyond the death, beyond his death. Why? It is proved it was proved by Freud that our body consists of billion living cells. These cells always, there is a degeneration. The law of these cells are subject of degeneration. So every time our cells dies, every time we are dying in terms of cells, in terms of body. But it is proved that mind never dies. Every day our physical body dies, but mind never dies. Mind remains intact. So if a man lives 90 years, it means that 90 times his body was dead, 90 times. So if a man, but not his mind. So if body dies and mind remains intact, so where is that mind? Mind has independent existence. Mind has independent existence. So death means death of body. Death doesn't mean death of mind. So I think that I can say that our present body is nothing but vehicle of our mind, vehicle of our personality. Our personality is an eternal part of our life, of our being. So I think that death means change of vehicle. Death means change of vehicle. So our mind, our intellectual personality only changes present vehicle, and he adopts a new vehicle after death. So death reminds this fact that death means traveling from this world to another world. So you have to be prepared for the other world. So I think that death is a reminder. And then I can say that when I attend any funeral, every time I feel that just like I'm also I'm also will die just like that person. So sometime I'll say that count down, reach to the last but one. So it reminds my death. And death means only traveling from this world to the other world. So death is very important. Death gives us the greatest lesson. If there is a hadith that Aksiru Zikr Hadmil Lazzat Al-Maut, it means that if someone reminds death, it gives you all those lessons you required. Death is enough to give you all those lessons. So, according to my experience, death is very important.
Maulana, today there is a lot of talk about global warming. Is this global warming a sign of doomsday? Can you give any Quranic reference in this regard?
Yes, there are a number of references in Quran and also in Hadith that in the later days or in the end of the history, the temperature of sun will be sun will be warmer and it will be very difficult to live on this earth. There are several references in Quran and Hadith. And according to my analysis, present global warming is a sign that now we are approaching the end of the history. It is very clear in the Quran and Hadith that this world is not an eternal world. The day will come when God will destroy all these things, and then He will build a new world. Yawma tabaddalu al-ardu ghayra al-ard. There are a number of references. So it is very clear in the Quran and Hadith that this world is not an eternal world. So I think that we are approaching the end of this world. We are approaching the end of this world. And there are signs. I have published an article on this subject that there are in Hadith gives us some signs, SIGNS sign. So that signs are now appearing every day. So it is nearly certain that present global warming is not reversible. It is a warning. Global warming means global warning that now the end of history is very near. Even scientists are saying that present process is not reversible. So also in in Quran, according to Quran Hadith, it is not reversible, and also according to science, science it is not reversible. So it is a very dangerous sign. People must take lesson and reassess their activities. They revise their life and correct their behavior. We have no time. Now time is very short. So global warming is a global warning, and I think it is a final call from God Almighty.
There are several hadiths, Maulana, which indicates or gives signs for doomsday. One such hadith which I remember is that the earth will come closer. There are several hadiths which indicates or give signs of doomsday. One hadith which I remember is that when the hereafter or when the doomsday is near, the sun will come closer to earth. What does that mean?
I think that it is not in terms of distance, but in terms of temperature. I don't think the sun itself will be closer. No, but the earth will be more. But earth will receive more heat than the present. So it is not in terms of distance, it is in terms of temperature. Because if sun itself will be closer to us, then everything will be destroyed. Certainly, at once will be destroyed everything. So I think that it is in terms of temperature, not in terms of distance.
Maulana, you are also a founder of CPS International, which is called Center for Peace and Spirituality. Can you tell us what is this Center for Peace and Spirituality?
You know, peace and spirituality are two very important value of our life. Spirituality for an individual and peace for the society. Without peace, there is no healthy society. Without peace, there is no progress, social progress. So peace is the greatest. Peace has the greatest value in terms of society. And spirituality is very important in terms of individual. Every individual needs spiritual development. Without spiritual development, man is like an animal. So both are very important, peace and spirituality. Peace is important for society and spirituality is important for individual. So we try to promote these two values. We want to develop man and we also want to develop society. So both are very important. Without spirituality, there is no any good citizens. Spirituality makes you good citizen, good person, and peace peace opens all those opportunities in society. Without peace, no progress is possible. Without peace, there is no development, no progress at all. So peace is very, very important in terms of social development. And spirituality is very, very important in terms of individual development. Both are important.
Is this a NGO and is it open for everybody or is it meant only for Muslims?
For everybody. No, it's not for Muslims. Not for Muslims. Because peace and spirituality is a common need. So we invite Muslim or non-Muslim both. We try to propagate our mission among all the communities. It is not a communal organization. It is a universal organization. Center for Peace and Spirituality is not a communal body, not communal organization. It is a universal organization.
In various forums, you have often mentioned that peace is in contentment and not in abundance. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
The reason is that our desires are unlimited, but our world is limited. It is a common experience that our desires are unlimited, but present world is limited. So you cannot fulfill all your desires in this limited world. You cannot fulfill all your desires that are unlimited in this limited world. So there is no formula other than contentment. If fulfillment is not possible, then the only formula to live in peace is contentment. It is very clear. No one was able to fulfill all his desires. All those wealthy people or those kings, no one was able to fulfill his desires completely because our world is limited. So if it is not possible to fulfill all of our desires, if it is not possible to fulfill all of our desires, then we have no option other than to live in contentment. So the formula of peaceful life is based. So the formula of peaceful life is contentment rather than abundance. That is impossible.
But Maulana, don't you think that this contentment will stop the progress or development of a man? So discontentment is rather very essential for the progress.
I don't think so. Contentment means acceptance of reality and not to stop your activities. That's another thing. Without stopping your activity, you can live in contentment. Just like myself, I never stop my activity. Every time I am active, but I live in contentment.
So can we say that as far as materialism is concerned, one should be contented, but in terms of learning, one should be discontented?
You are right. You are right. You are right. learning is a continuous process. There is no end in learning. Material achievement has some limitations. Material achievements have some limitations, but not the learning. Learning is a continuous process. The learning, the field of learning is your mind, and mind is unlimited. Our body is limited, our world is limited, our sources are limited, but not the mind. Mind is unlimited. So when you try to learn, then you are active in your unlimited world. There is mind. So there is no limitations.
Thank you, Maulana Waiduddin Khan Sahab, for sharing your views with us.